All right, so moving on to the final segment, I'll be sharing my UFC 300 pay-per-view dream card. So this is how I will book UFC, the pay-per-view 300. 300, having 300 pay-per-views for Dana White and company to build the UFC up from the ground up is incredible. And this upcoming April in combat sports, we will see UFC's 300th pay-per-view. That is a remarkable, I'm going to say it again, a remarkable accomplishment for them to do 300 pay-per-views. The business is thriving. UFC is at an all-time high. I'm happy for them, being a fan of combat sports and MMA. So it's good to see. But this would be my my dream card for UFC 300. And this is how I would build a card, from the undercard, from the main event all the way to the main event, as I get tongue-tied, main event, from the main event, all the co-main event and down for the main card of UFC 300. But my main event I would have in the UFC 300 pay-per-view would be between Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler. Nobody is more deserving of headlining and main eventing the UFC 300 pay-per-view more than Conor McGregor. He's no doubt the biggest box office attraction in UFC history. The former undisputed double champion in UFC has made the name for himself. Box office attraction. Closing in on being a potential billionaire as a still active athlete is always a great accomplishment for Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor has been out of the octagon for the last 2.5 years. This would be the best time for Conor McGregor to make his return to the octagon. No better way to do it in Las Vegas, Nevada at UFC 300 in the main event against Michael Chandler. And the build-up, we have been slowly seeing the build-up between Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler. They both have expressed their interest of fighting each other on a grand stage. Dana White could set it up for the main event of UFC 300 between two veteran fighters, still hungry, still jockeying for position to potentially be a UFC world champion in the UFC today. So I think that's a great fight between two veteran fighters. I definitely would book this as the main event of UFC 300 next April. Then in the co-main event, I would have Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. I think this is the biggest fight to make right now in the UFC at the light heavyweight division. Alex Pereira is the new light heavyweight champion after defeating Alex Pereira at Madison Square Garden just a few weeks ago in the UFC, and he barely took any punishment against Yuri Prochazka. Now, I do believe that he only needs a little time off, and I think he could be ready to go for April. So I think a clash with Jamal Hill is very likely to be at UFC 300. Now, I do see this happening, and I think this would be the best fight to be made in the light heavyweight division right now between Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill. Now, this is a dream scenario, a trilogy fight taking place between Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje. Now, will the trilogy ever happen in the UFC? I'm not 100% sure, and I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get the trilogy because Justin Gaethje is trying to become the lightweight champion in the UFC today, taking that belt from Islam Makhachev, and Dustin Poirier could have the same goals. So could we see it in the lightweight division again? Yes, absolutely. Would I love to see that again? Absolutely, yes. And I think at UFC 300, this would be the dream scenario, but I think this would be a perfect scenario for the trilogy to take place between Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier. We saw in the first fight, Dustin Poirier knocked out Justin Gaethje, and that first time that they fought in the 4th round years ago. Then this past July, we saw in the second fight that we saw Justin Gaethje knock out Dustin Poirier in the 2nd round of that fight. So I think a trilogy would be nice to see one day in the UFC. Will we see it? Time will tell. I'm not sure. But that would be a great addition to the UFC 300 card. And the final card I would have, the final fight I would have on the main card of UFC 300 and my dream card will be Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker. Now, Khamzat Chimaev, just a few months ago, has his first big UFC test with flying colors against Kamaru Usman. Now, he did defeat Kamaru Usman on late notice. It was a 3-round fight, but if any chance you get to defeat a legend like Kamaru Usman, you better brag about it, take it to the bank, and deposit that check. Because that is Khamzat Chimaev's biggest victory of his young UFC career thus far. But I think he needs to pass another big test before he gets a title opportunity. I think a big test against Robert Whittaker would be a tremendous fight in that middleweight division. Now, the winner of that fight could potentially get a shot at the middleweight title. I think Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker could potentially happen very soon in the UFC. But that would be my main card, UFC 300 pay-per-view dream card. And that is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree, signing off. And I'll see you guys on next week's episode.